Thank you for tuning in to another episode of One More Story. Just a quick programming note, parents, if you'd like to skip past the interview and go straight to the first story, you can find it at the 11-minute mark. And please be sure to like, subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on all the social media platforms at One More Story Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in and enjoy tonight's episode. Welcome to One More Story. Our guest tonight is Chris Geere. He says he is an actor. I only know him as my chatty neighbor down the street, but maybe he can educate us all on who he is and what he's been up to. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Sir Peter Chilella from down the road, equally as chatty. Coming to you live from Manchester in the UK, where it's currently the afternoon, where it's your morning, and I'm ready to tell some bedtime stories. Don't you automatically have a kind of nice, gentle voice when you're telling a story?
It's helpful.
I love it. I love this. I love it. I love having these microphones so that we can really show off that Britishness. In terms of my...
You love the sound of your own voice, don't you?
I'm an actor.
Well, that's what you keep telling me. So where do you do this acting, Chris?
Well, I tell you what, I have been very fortunate enough to live in 2 different countries for the last decade, pretty much. So the work has been spanned across Europe, but mostly in America and Canada. And I joined a rather successful comedy show called Modern Family about 6 years ago. And that was off the back of 5 seasons of a show called You're the Worst for a brilliant network called FX. I played an acerbic, mean guy called Jimmy Shive-Overly in FX's You're the Worst. And then I went on to Modern Family. And then I went on to a fantastic show called This Is Us, which finished just last year.
So You're the Worst. Now, was that autobiographical?
I
know, that was a cheap shot, wasn't it?
Well, I'd laugh away, Pete, if you were the first person to say that.
Oh,
but what is quite funny, especially when I'm in America, is when you're just simply walking down the road and someone shouts "You're the worst" out the window at you. So, sometimes I wish the show was named something else, but I'm very grateful for the experience.
Well, and I'm sort of lying because I have watched some of your stuff. So
is that because I made you?
No, it was when we first met, I had no idea who you were. You were just this chatty, friendly British fella down the street, and and we would drink red wine together, and now,
as all great men do, my friend,
exactly by the fire, and then I was like, oh, this guy is funny. I should check it out. And then, my wife, Kelly, is super into, or was when it was running, This Is Us. So we watched all your stuff.
I think I was I'm very, very grateful, but I was very lucky to be in a position to join 2 quite big shows at the end of their run. So to see, the amalgamation of all the hard work they'd done in Modern Family, it was 11 years they'd been there, and I joined in the last year. And This Is Us, they'd done 6 seasons, and I joined in the 5th. So to be a part of that, and seems to be sounds cheesy, but a part of TV history. So I'll always remember those jobs. Wonderful.
Is it strange that once you get on a show, it tends to get canceled? Did you ever think about that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, maybe that's my calling card. Maybe like I'm the guy that they call when they're ending a show. Get Geere in.
The closer. You are the closer.
Well, luckily they both kind of finished on their own terms. So rather than being cancelled because of my appearance.
Well, that's good. And so you were just in Canada for a month working on something. Can you talk about that, or is that?
I can't give you the name of the show.
Okay.
However, I can tell you, which tunes in nicely with what we're doing here today, is there is a group of very, very successful children's books that have been made into a show. And it's not Harry Potter.
I
Don't
know
worry.
everybody's thinking,
I'm
it's
doing
Harry
that.
Potter, Harry Potter.
But another one. And they are making the TV show of this, and it's going to be dark and mysterious. A little like Stranger Things is going to be on Disney, and it's released around Halloween time, I believe. But I can't talk about what the name of the show is or what my character is, but I can tell you it's going to be amazing. So I will keep you posted on when we can announce that.
Fantastic. And so now you're back in the UK. What are you up to these days? I hear you're doing some home improvements.
I'm struggling at some home improvements. I always go in very enthusiastic, thinking that I can take on these simple menial tasks, and then I get there and realize I'm just an actor who's trying to make stuff out of wood. So yeah, I've built a tree house. I've varnished a garden table, and I've just finished painting my son's bedroom while he's away on a school trip. So I feel very busy. There's a huge sense of accomplishment. However, it's far more challenging than I anticipated.
Oh, it always is. Even the simplest tasks tend to turn into these just gigantic projects that take forever, like putting in a new grill, for instance.
Which I helped you do.
You did, and it was a very frustrating process, and I couldn't have done it without you. So thank you.
Aww. Thanks. Gratitude. Yeah. There's an old adage, which is as soon as you complete one home improvement task, you notice 10 others. And I can very much tell you that is true. So now we have started, I think we're going to take quite a while to complete, but I shall be back in Los Angeles very soon and hanging out with your good self.
Nice. Well, I can't wait. And then, so you also, but you and your wife, Jenny, are doing your own podcast, right?
We do. We have a fun little podcast called I Love You But, which is available on all the old podcast stations. It's basically Jenny and I riffing about living as a married couple after 16 years, living in two different countries, and how we challenge the unknown territories of everything from culture to different types of experiences in different places, and we mock each other throughout. And we also have this thing, because my wife is a wonderful pianist / singer musician, so we have these jingles that are all written by her in between, which make the show nice and fun. It seems a bit like a radio show at times, like a radio breakfast show. It's 20 minutes long. We put one out every week, and we just love it. So, yeah, if you want to tune in, it's ILYB on Instagram, and all the links are there.
Yeah, I need to catch up then. I'm a little bit behind, so
that's all right. You're a podcast host yourself. I realize how tricky and hardworking you need to be a podcast host.
Well, it's not just the this of it. It's not just the interviewing. It's everything else around it.
Absolutely. And I think that's slightly akin to being an actor at the moment.
Right.
You know, because pre-COVID, we all used to go into the rooms and meet the casting directors, etc. And now we have to be the director, the producer, the lighting person, the editor, all these different parts that make up an audition. And it's the same with a podcast. So, but it's a learning experience, as you know. And
it is.
I'm enjoying it.
And it's great, too, because, you're learning all these new skills, and you have agency over all of this. Like, you have control over all of it. And so there's something empowering about being able to do it all yourself, That's
what I love the most. That's what I love, having that control. I mean, both of us are in a profession where the majority of the time, our future is out of our hands.
Right.
And so we can do our best work, but it's usually down to millions of other people to make those decisions. So it's nice to be in the driving seat.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I started this, is because I wanted to get stories out there and I didn't want any gatekeepers. And it's just so much fun to hear what comes from other people's brains, in these stories, because, my daughter, I tell her these stories almost every night, and, I start to run out of material, and sometimes
Absolutely.
I recycle things, and so I'm excited to hear what we come up with. I'm excited to play. Are you ready to get into it?
I'm not ready. Let's go.
Perfect. The word is forest. We are looking for a story about a forest.
I love it. Pete, I shall begin.
Begin.
It was a dark and blustery night. Inside a house, a cosy little house, not frightening in any way, was a young boy. His name was Ethan. Now, Ethan went to bed fairly early every night, and he would have the same routine. He'd have a nice hot cup of cocoa, he'd take it up to his room, and he'd lie there, and he'd sit and breathe and listen to the sounds outside the window, and usually they would calm him down. But tonight was different. Tonight the wind howled outside. He could hear the sound of birds that don't usually make a sound at that time of night, and he started to feel a little unnerved. He just wasn't as tired as he usually is, as he usually wants to be. So, if he feels uncomfortable, as his mum and dad told him, the best thing to do was to reach to his bedside table and pick up his torch. Now, his torch, he would flash around the wall just to show himself that nothing was wrong, everything was calm, and to look at the pictures on the wall. But tonight was different. Tonight, everything that he pointed at came alive. There were pictures of beaches, of seas, of family portraits, and he pointed the torch at them. And if he looked at a family portrait, his mum and dad would smile at him, and that comforted him. He would look at another picture of a beach, and he could see a bird sweeping in through the beach. And then there was a picture of a forest. This forest was beautiful, green, daylight. And he said to himself, as he closed his eyes, I wish I could go there. He clicked his fingers and he disappeared out of bed and into the forest.
And when he got to the forest, it wasn't nighttime anymore. It was a beautiful, beautiful sunny day, the way the sun flickered through the leaves, and there was a gentle wind in the air. And he looked all around and he took it all in, and just then a deer, a buck, ran by, and then he saw some birds. And then the most curious thing happened. It was a gopher making bird noises, and he thought, this is very peculiar. So he cocked his head to the side and he looked at the gopher, and then the gopher mimicked what Ethan was doing. And so Ethan gave him back that sound. And they started communicating like that. And it was very strange because Ethan had never spoken bird. So he then asked in English, he asked the gopher, well, can we just talk in English, because this is really foreign to me, and I think I'm in a dream and I might be able to hang with you in conversation, but can we just keep it simple? And the gopher said, sure. And Ethan was blown away. He was stunned. Here is this gopher who's making bird noises and is fluent in English. And the gopher said to him, welcome to my enchanted forest. And Ethan said, well, what do you mean, my enchanted forest? He said, well, I am the king of this forest. And Ethan sort of laughed. He said, but you're just a little gopher who talks like a bird. And he said, well, no, here I am king. And I'd like to show you around my forest. Take my hand. And Ethan thought about it, and he looked around, and it seemed safe enough. You know, he was a little gopher. If it came down to it, he could hold his own with this little gopher. You know, his parents had always told him not to follow strangers, but he felt safe with this gopher. So Ethan reached out his little hand, and the gopher reached out his little claw, and they held hands and claw, and they started walking. And the gopher led him to a pond. And in that pond, there was the strangest duck you've ever seen.
The duck didn't look like any other duck you'd ever seen. And that was simply because he had 2 heads. Now, Ethan looked at the duck and he said, it looks like a duck, it sounds like a duck, but it has 2 heads. And he said to the gopher, why does that duck have 2 heads? And the gopher looked at him and smiled and said, so he can see everything in the forest. With 2 heads, the duck can look around and sense any danger at any time. Therefore, he was the gopher's head security duck, the only duck in the forest that had the ability to censor who came in and out of the forest. Ethan looked over at the gopher and he said, well, am I okay to be here? I've never been here before. Is this okay with King Duck? And he said, well, shall we ask him? And so Ethan looked towards the duck and he said, hello, Mr. Two-Headed Duck. Am I okay to be here? Quack, quack, said the duck. And the gopher looked at Ethan. Ethan looked back at the gopher and he said, what did he say? And the gopher said, it's absolutely fine that you're here. Absolutely fine. He said, welcome to the forest and come and have another look around. And then he introduced him to another friend who was in the pond called Prince Frogalot. Now, Prince Frogalot was one of the most sportiest, athletic creatures you'd ever seen. He could jump higher than anyone else, any animal ever could. He could sing like an angel. He could tell jokes. He could cook. He was the cleverest, most fantastic frog one had ever seen. But, and this is what we later found out from the gopher, the frog had a secret.
And the frog's secret was that he was terribly insecure. It was all a charade. It was all a charade. Deep down inside, he was terrified. He put up this false bravado to cover his fears. And so when Ethan and King Gopher were walking away from the pond and the gopher was explaining to Ethan about the Prince Frogalot, whatever his name was, Sir Frogalicious, they had a conversation about fear. And this is something that resonated with Ethan because he had just come from sort of an unsettling night at home. You know, and he wasn't a kid who spooked easily, and he was comforted when he saw the photo of his parents and the beach and the forest. There was nothing threatening on the walls when it came to life, but it was what was outside of his house that he was afraid of that night, and he didn't like that feeling. So he said to King Gopher, King Gopher, what can I do to overcome my fears? I don't want to carry myself with false bravado like Prince Frogalot. I want to be secure inside. I want to have that inner confidence that shines through. What do I need to do? And so King Gopher turned to him and said, come with me. And they started walking away from the forest towards the Great Mountain.
The Great Mountain was only visited by a handful of people every year, because usually it was covered in snow and the conditions made it quite uncomfortable for anyone that visited. But not this time, because Ethan was wearing his dressing gown, his slippers, and he had his teddy bear with him from home. and he felt comforted by being surrounded by such regal people, or animals such as King Gopher and Prince Frog-a-Lot. And Prince Frog-a-Lot said, "This is the mountain of wishes, and all I wish is that for my insecurities to go away." He wished, he closed his eyes, and nothing happened. He said, "How long do I have to wait to see if my wish comes true? On the surface, it looks as if I'm a talented frog with everything in the world I ever could have wished for. But deep down, I'm just an insecure frog who, to be honest, is quite tired." And that suddenly made Ethan think, well then, if you're tired, there is simply one thing that you must do. So Gopher looked at him and he said, "Speaking of tired, Ethan, it's nearly time for you to go back." And he said, "Okay, well then I have a secret too. This is a secret for falling asleep, and you have control over it. You can do it any time you want." They both looked at him in awe. They were so thrilled to find out what this secret could be. They gathered in a circle, per Ethan's request, and they held hands and paws and amphibious little things that frogs have. And they closed their eyes. Ethan looked at them both and he said, "And now take one deep breath. Hold it, hold it, hold it, and breathe out." They opened their eyes and they were still there. The mountain was still there. The gopher was still there. The frog was still there. Ethan was still in this forest area with the mountains in the distance. Nothing had happened like it usually does. And then he realized, at first you must make a wish before you breathe. And so they closed their eyes, and all three of them made a wish. King Gopher wished for more visitors to come and visit his wonderful forest. Prince Frog-a-Lot wished that he could let go of his insecurities and become the frog that he always wanted to be. And Ethan wished that he was fast asleep in bed. They held hands, they looked at each other, they closed their eyes and took one more breath. And when Ethan opened his eyes, it was the following morning, and he had slept all the way through. The wind had stopped outside and the sun was rising. The clouds in the sky had parted to reveal a blue, beautiful landscape. And just as he was about to get out of bed, he noticed something on the floor by his door.
It was a small clump of gopher fur, and he picked it up and he looked at it, and he looked at the painting of the forest on his wall, and he noticed something different this time. In that painting, which previously had just been trees and grass, in that painting, looking back and waving at him, were King Gopher and Prince Frog-a-Lot. And Ethan waved back and went on with his day. The end. Chris, are you ready for your solo story?
No, I am not. Let's go.
Perfect. The next word is monkey. Monkey.
It was spring term at school. Everyone was so excited for the summer holidays. It was the time of school where things kind of wound down before the holidays started, and the kids were able to wear their own clothes and bring in toys to play with, and maybe even bring in some cookies for the teacher and share out with the class. It was a Thursday, and all the kids were so excited. One more day, and then it's the summer holidays. Now the teacher stood up at the front of the class and she said, "Now tomorrow, as a special treat, I would like 3 of you to bring in your pets." The children looked around at each other. They were so excited. Children were shouting out, "Can I bring in my bunny? Can I bring in my dog? Maybe you can all come and see my fish." Now, some of the children had pets, but some didn't. Jeremy, he was a kid that had just moved from Europe to America, and he didn't have any pets. His family thought it was unwise to have an animal when you travelled so much. It was unfair on the animal, plus the veterinary bills would have been ridiculous. So he kept his hands by his side and decided not to participate in this fun event for the last day of school. But the teacher looked at him, knowing full well that he didn't have a pet and that he'd just moved from Europe. "Jeremy, would you like to bring in your animal tomorrow?" Jeremy looked at the teacher in disbelief. He couldn't believe that he was the one chosen. She knew that he didn't have a pet. He felt so embarrassed in front of his classmates. What on earth was he going to do? And the teacher looked at him, and then she smiled, and she said, "I'm sure you can do it." Now Jeremy said, "Well, there is this pet shop on the way home from school. Maybe I could pop in and, I don't know, buy a goldfish or a hamster that I can leave with my best friend Jackson when I leave. Something that's not too hard to look after, but would be fun to bring into school the next day." And so he looked at the teacher and he said, "Do you know what, Miss Treemanshire? I will take on this challenge, please. I will bring in an animal to school tomorrow." And everyone cheered and they said, "Go on, Jeremy. We're so excited to see your pet." Jeremy smiled, he laughed and walked outside of the classroom, and then it dawned on him, what on earth am I going to do? I don't have a pet. I'm going to have to go to this pet shop right away. So he ran to the pet shop. He didn't even take his school bag. He was desperate to get there. And he got to the pet shop. And there was a man there, big handlebar mustache, and he said, "Hello, how may I help you today?" And Jeremy looked at him and said, "I am looking for a pet that doesn't need much maintenance and that I can show my school tomorrow, and maybe I can give to a friend and it won't be too much hassle for them afterwards because I live in Europe and I don't need the responsibility of having a pet at this time." And the man looked at him. He wisped his fingers through his handlebar mustache and he said, "I believe I have the perfect thing. You, my boy, have you ever owned a monkey?" Jeremy said, "I don't think you fully understand what I'm getting at here. I need a low-maintenance animal to simply take into school. A monkey sounds like an absolute nightmare." "Ah, wispy wizard. Listen to me. This monkey is different. This monkey was bred by me." And Jeremy said, "Wow. So he's like a super posh monkey with a mustache?" And the man said, "No. He's a monkey, but he's very, very, very well behaved, and he'll do anything that you want." So he said, "Okay, well, let's give it a go. Where is this monkey?" And he said, "He will be delivered to you at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Be ready by your front door. You must have a banana in your hand. This will feed him and entice him and let him know that you will be taking care of him for the day." The next morning came. Jeremy came down the stairs. He grabbed a banana from the fruit bowl in the kitchen. He opened the door, and there he was, a monkey in a full 3-piece suit with a suitcase and a hat. Jeremy just stared at this monkey, complete disbelief. This was the most beautifully crafted monkey he'd ever seen. And so he said, "Hello, Mr. Monkey." And the monkey said, "Well, hello, Jeremy." Jeremy couldn't believe it. It was actually a talking monkey as well. And so Jeremy then decided to tell him exactly what was going on, and that he had to go into school and pretend that he was his pet for the day. The monkey, who we later realised his name was Cyril said, "Well, I think it's an absolutely blinding idea. Why don't we go in now, grab some bananas on the way in, have a nice little time at school, and then you can take me back to the shop." "This is perfect. I could take you in, I could show you off to all the kids, and then I could just give you back at the end of the day so I don't even have to have the responsibility of having a pet." "Ah, but there is a catch, dear Jeremy boy." Okay. What is it?" "You must give me a lifetime supply of bananas." And Jeremy said, well, what is a lifetime supply of bananas?" He said, "Well, us monkeys, we can live up to 7 years." 7 years worth of bananas? Where am I meant to find all those bananas?" "Ah, you will think of it. You will think of it. So Jeremy went to school. He showed off the monkey, and he thought, and everyone loved Jeremy. And they couldn't believe that he brought in this monkey to show everyone. The monkey was there. He did juggling tricks. He would do little tricks with his banana. He would tell jokes. He was the charming, most well-behaved, fantastic pet that anyone had ever seen. And because of that, Jeremy was the most popular kid in school. The teacher loved him. They broke up for the summer holidays, and everyone thought Jeremy was the man. It got to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. The whole school was now empty apart from Cyril and apart from Jeremy. Jeremy beaming ear to ear, and he said, "Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything you've done today. What can I possibly do to thank you?" And Cyril said, "Well, do you not remember our deal? Because you must complete your part of the bargain in order for this transaction to complete." And Jeremy said, Oh yeah, I need a lot of bananas." They were walking down the road together, and Jeremy said, "I have no idea what I'm going to do here. Can I put him on a plane and send him to a country where there's loads of bananas and leave him there, maybe? But maybe I could ask my mum to grow a banana tree in the garden." And then he saw something that might just save his day. It was a supermarket, and in the window it said, "Looking for staff to work in the fresh produce section." I couldn't believe his eyes. He went to the supermarket, he took Cyril in there, and they spoke to the manager. And the manager said, "Well, yes, do you have any experience with fresh produce?" And Cyril said, "Why, yes, I do." And they shook hands, and Cyril started his job working on the fruit and veg. He was paid minimum wage, but that didn't matter, because part of the job meant that he could eat as many bananas as he liked, especially the ones that went out of date, and he was the happiest monkey alive. And Jeremy felt like a good friend, a good man, and a good owner of a monkey for a day. The end.
Chris Geere, thank you so much for coming on and playing with us tonight. That was awesome.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed myself, actually. I think this is something that grown-ups should do more often. I wish you all the success with this, PD, and thank you for having me on, and thank you everyone that listened.